Tell me who your, do you have a typical caller?
A typical caller? No. There's nothing typical about a Hoosier. There isn't. You've got people who are agreeing with you. There are people who are disagreeing with you. Then there are people who are correcting you because they quite literally, they know the subject matter really well. And they're letting you know, well, Tony, don't forget this and don't forget this and don't forget that this once happened back in 1907. Oh my God, you're researching to make sure they're right, and they're right, and then you let them go. So no, nothing typical here in Indiana. I used to think I understood the conservative voter, not necessarily the Republican voter. I've always said about Trump guys, right? Trump supporters, I understand those people. You know, you've been lied to every single time, every single election. There comes a moment where you actually have to stop. You have to say no. You have to just give up the ghost on what it is people have been promising you, and you have to go about something to shake that up. That's what Trump is. That's what Trump's about. It's a creation vehicle, if you will. Now, people thought that was going to be Ted Cruz until Trump came along. People thought that was Chris Christie. Well, that could have been true in 2012. And then Trump came along, and Trump out-Christied Chris Christie. The anger's real, and the divisions right now are real. Do they hold? That I don't know, right? That's when we get into a general. Will Cruz supporters, if Trump's the nominee, really and truly stay home? Will Trump supporters really and truly stay home? Will Trump supporters decide to support Hillary in a general in order to blow the whole thing up again because they're not going to let the Republicans win with what they think is establishment? Will either one of them be the nominee in a contested convention? How will people react to that? I don't have an answer for any of those hypotheticals. I do know that the anger part is real, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
How much fun are you having right now because of this presidential race?
I'm having fun in general. You know, this is the greatest gig ever. This race is one part fun and one part frustration. If I don't speak glowingly enough about Donald Trump, I get screamed at. If I speak too glowingly about Donald Trump, I get screamed at, and that's just from my program director. So it's this constant barrage of feelings from people on both sides of the aisle and on both sides of the Republican aisle as well, coming at you. And the only thing you can do is have an honest conversation, which is what we do every morning. Certainly I'm a guy with an opinion. I'm not afraid to share it. But I'm having a ball because I'm having a ball. This election is fascinating, though. You know, I was there for 2012. I covered that election. I actually worked the trail and covered the candidates in Iowa and South Carolina and did the live broadcast from an organization out of D.C. to talk about your results coming in. This is different. This is this is fascinating more than anything else.
What do you expect here over the next few weeks with Indiana in play?
Indiana is the story. It's been since 1976 for Republicans. 1976, 40 years. This state has not mattered to a GOP nominee, and now it does. I expect a ridiculous amount of advertising. If people have never experienced what it's like to be in a state that gets political ads, watch what happens. You are going to be inundated. Now take this basically 2.5, 3 weeks we're going to get of it and multiply that times 4 months, and that's what you get in Iowa. That's what it's like before the Iowa caucuses. I expect that to be fascinating. I expect everybody to be talking about it. Even the most casual observer is going to be engaging it. And one of the things I love about being in talk radio and radio in general is that this is where a lot of those conversations are going to happen. Yes, there's going to be plenty on TV and Indy this week and a lot of good stuff, but radio all up and down the aisle, whether you're listening to Hank Country or Soft Rock on B, they're going to be talking about this because it affects all of us, and everybody's going to have to stake their claim and make their case and try and prove it in their vote. So I think it's going to be just terrific.
We get to Cleveland, we get out of Cleveland.
Alive?
Possibly.
Right?
If Trump doesn't have the delegates going into Cleveland.
Right.
Who comes out of Cleveland as the GOP nominee?
All right, 2 parts to that just painful question. I have made the argument on air repeatedly that if Trump has 1,237 delegates, he's the nominee. It's game over. And if the Republican Party tries to steal it from him, they should expect everything that's coming. Anything that happens in Cleveland, if he has 1,237 plus delegates and doesn't get the nomination, will be the fault of the Republican Party and Reince Priebus. Period. If he doesn't have 1,237, well, then it's game on. It's anybody's ball game. And the party will then act in the party's best interest. I very much doubt that that's going to be Donald Trump. I am not one of the ones who believes that it's close enough and they'll just work a couple of delegates to push him over the edge. I think they will either go to someone like Cruz, even though they hate Cruz, or they will pick somebody who has at least been involved in the process, who has gotten a vote in the past. Now that leads to a horror situation. If it went to someone like Marco Rubio, I think the party could live with that. He's the guy, one of the guys that they wanted anyway. And I think America could somehow get their head around that fact. Some may not like it, don't get me wrong. If you think your candidate has more delegates and it goes to somebody else, they may get upset. But if it goes to a guy, like a true establishment guy like Jeb Bush, expect zero turnout. Literally zero. Because guys like me will have nothing to vote for. Absolutely nothing.
So to that end, hypothetically, the Republican Party puts whomever they decide to put in place.
If no one gets 1,237 delegates.
What's the trickle-down effect for Republican races here in Indiana come November?
Well, no turnout is bad news if you're Marlon Stutzman or Todd Young. No turnout will be bothersome. Now, the fact that we have a gubernatorial race here, that may help a bit, but we're playing in hypothetical on hypothetical there. But one should ask the question, what does Trump mean to turn out in Indiana? What does Cruz mean to turn out in Indiana? The anti-Hillary effect, if Hillary's the nominee, the anti-socialist effect, if Bernie's the nominee, I don't know where we are yet with those things. What I do know is that the Republican Party has an opportunity to destroy itself completely, for the extent that it isn't already, with a choice they make in Cleveland. Make the wrong choice and that's over. Let's start fresh again. If I'm sitting on the back porch having a cigar and drinking a craft beer, a brown ale, amber, something like that. No pale ales. Pale ales are terrible. Stop drinking pale ales. Thank you. I'm going to get yelled at by every beer manufacturer in Indiana. When I get excited about something, I get excited about something. The only thing that's true of me is that I really have no indoor voice. This is my voice. This is it. And it's pretty loud and people can hear me. But no, I think people have this idea that I'm an angry guy. I have the greatest life in the world, and I've worked hard to get here, and I don't shy away from it, and there are only great things ahead. And I'm enjoying every single bit of it, not angry in the slightest. But sometimes, I think sometimes people think I am.
What have you loved about being here so far?
First of all, I really like Indianapolis. I really, really like Indianapolis. And when I first got here, the first two questions that people asked me were, what do you think of the weather? Because I came from Los Angeles, and the weather here is, well, it's awful. And then, when are you leaving? Literally, those are the first two questions. Now, people don't ask me about the weather. They just want to know when I'm leaving. I have no intention of leaving. The city is young and vibrant, and what has happened, the prologue of Indianapolis and what it took to get here. And you talk about Mayor Hudnut, you talk about some of the really visionary work. It is stunning how well that stuff has come together, and that stuff should be studied, and we should see what it took to get here. But what's happening now, you take a look at the cooking world here, the food world here. When I first moved here, everybody told me it was nothing but box restaurants. That is nonsense. James Beard Award finalists, James Beard Award winners here in Indy. The restaurant scene is growing. We have ramen. Ramen has come to Indianapolis, and pretty good stuff as well. The art scene here, if you haven't spent time at the IMA and just stared at the Hoppers and the O'Keeffes and some of the changing exhibits that they have on the fourth floor. The cars exhibit, the dream cars that they just had, was spectacular. Some of the art galleries that are here downtown. Heck, just the idea of local neighborhoods, the Mass Ave world, or Broad Ripple, or you go down to Fletcher Place, Fountain Square, right? And then what they're trying to do in some of the other areas. Speedway. Go down that main street of Speedway. It's fantastic what's happening, what's coming, and what's growing. That's the stuff I find exciting. There is art happening here, and I find art in all places. And it's not just, Book of Mormon or Newsies. And Newsies was a fantastic show at Clues. It was really, really well done. The food scene here is art. And then there's the actual scene of art here. And sports is not just Colts and Pacers, although Colts and Pacers, it's the Indy 11, it's the Indy Fuel, it's the Indians. It's happening on a bunch of different levels that are affordable levels for people as well, and not just meant for people who have ridiculous amounts of expendable income. That to me is fun and exciting, and I like watching that. I like watching that and sharing in that and celebrating that a lot.